Call to order this meeting of the Westford Public Schools School Committee. It is Monday, March 11th, 2024. This meeting is being recorded. The first order of business is to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, if you're able to join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hang on, I'm just leaving Mari in.
Okay, the next order of business is consent agenda, so we will, if anyone has any questions or comments on what's in the packet for meeting minutes and warrants. Otherwise, we'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Roll call. Chris?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mari?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mari. Don't forget to mention it's being recorded.
I did at the beginning.
Mhm.
Okay, so next up is public comment. We take virtual public comment or in person, and I have a little thing.
Do you want to?
No, it's all right. Yeah, hold on.
Gentle.
Hold on. Oh, there it is. Okay.
It wasn't scrolling. For
All
you.
right. It's a Monday. Every day that seems time.
That's
My
true.
son told me that today is called National Nap Day because
Oh.
it's
It is.
the day after.
Really?
It is.
Yes.
It's the day after which?
I didn't observe.
Yeah.
Oh, the
So, a reminder that public comment for any item or topic on or off the agenda is always available near the top of the agenda for individuals to share their thoughts. Speakers will be limited to 2 minutes per person. Please use public comment even if you refer to something later on the agenda. Virtual public comment is available through Zoom. Raise your hand and you'll be unmuted, or in person at the microphone at Millennium Conference Room B. And please introduce yourself and then you can speak. So we'll go to in line. In the room first, go ahead.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Nate McKinnon, 8 Sherlock Lane, Westford, Massachusetts. Proud papa of Madeline McKinnon, who today we registered for kindergarten at Robinson, which we are very excited for. It was an emotional moment for my family and I. And I bring up Madeline and my son Nico because they are the reason we moved to the town of Westford. And we moved here to provide the absolute best quality education possible for our children, like so many other families, and I think many of you have as well. And that's why I'm here tonight, is because on behalf of the Vote Yes for Westford, Save Our Services group, I remain very concerned about what faces this town should this override not pass. And I see tonight on your agenda that you are taking positions on the articles and want to strongly encourage each and every one of you to support the Proposition 2.5 override article that's coming before town meeting. Ultimately, if this doesn't pass, it's not the Westford that I wanted to live in. It's not the schools that I wanted to send my kids to. And I think that investing in the future is incredibly important for each and every one of us, and that it's time that we take that step forward. I also want to thank the school committee for the work you've done in bringing the budget down to a reasonable amount from an override perspective. You started with a much bigger number with the select board and brought it to a place that I think is much more manageable for the townspeople, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to get this through town meeting and also onto the electorate through the ballot. So I just want to take this opportunity to say that looking at 100 positions over 3 years is incredibly dire from our perspective and from my perspective personally. And just wanted to take a moment to call that out for us and make sure that you know that we are very appreciative of the work you've done, and that we are hopeful that this gets through, and that we're not looking at what positions we have to cut and how bad the cuts will be. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
We'll switch to Zoom if there's.
we have one person here. Patty, you should be able to speak now. Can you hear us, Patty? There we go.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. So my name is Patty Huang for Birchwood Drive, parent to a 10th and 7th grader. I just wanted to comment and just say that as we get close to the March 23rd meeting, I wanted to encourage everyone to vote yes for the override. The reason I'm voting yes is because the most impacted population is our most vulnerable, which are the over 4,400 school-age children in Westford. If the override doesn't pass, the teaching staff reductions will be felt by each and every Westford student. The removal of all elementary and middle school reading and math interventionists will disrupt the learning process for all K-8 students. Students requiring additional reading or math support will no longer receive traditional intervention through small group learning. Instead, their general ed teachers will have the near impossible task of keeping the entire class moving forward despite significant differences in reading and math ability. High school staff reductions will create a rift in the student body as students who worked towards honors and AP prerequisites will find their fate decided by lotteries. The reduction in elective courses, extracurricular activities, and sports will impact mental health and well-being because they are needed to create balance in an otherwise chaotic and stressful school day. The relationships built in these classrooms and activities are often stronger than traditional core classes. Without them, there will be gaps in support and social emotional learning that may not be realized until it's too late. If you vote no, you're making a conscious choice to drastically change the learning environment our students have become accustomed to. You're choosing to ignore the mental health needs of our youth, and you're contributing to its escalating rise. Personally, I think our students deserve better, and I don't want that to weigh on my conscience, so I will be voting yes for the override. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Anyone else in the room for public comment? We have one more else.
I do. Let's flick back and forth. There must be a quicker way to do this. There we go. She should be. There we go. Jackie, you should be able to hear us.
Hi, Jackie, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah.
Hi, thank you very much. Hi, Jackie Cuniff, 5 Tatbuck Road. So some of you already know me, and I have 2 roles in Westford Public Schools. So first and foremost, I'm a parent of 2 daughters, one who's graduated and one who's still at WA. I want to tell you that both of my girls, who have had very different needs and strengths and learning styles, have flourished in our schools. It hasn't been because of one single program, but the combination of educators, course offerings, and extracurriculars that have supported my girls and have provided them with an excellent education in Westford. I'm really worried that my younger daughter won't have the options and the educators and the support that my older daughter did as she finished high school. And then in my other role as an educator in Westford Public Schools, I'm a special education teacher at the K-2 level. And I'm very worried about the cuts to the services that support students in the general education setting. Without our reading specialists and our reading interventionists, math interventionists, and all of those supports, our classroom teachers' attention is really going to need to be focused on providing all of those interventions on their own. And I believe that the referrals for special education evaluations will go up considerably. This will affect all students, not just those who require support. I've seen this in other districts where I've worked, and there is a ripple effect of not having enough general education support, and it really would affect all students. I really believe that the cuts would result in devastating effects to our students and to our entire system, and that's why I'm voting yes to support the override.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
Oh, I have another one here as well online. Okay, and Susan. Susan, I'm just letting you. There we go. Oh. Hi, Susan.
Can you hear us, Susan?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Oh, it's very, very faint.
Can you try again?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little better. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Hi, I'm Susan Guidetti, and I have a son in third grade and a daughter in fifth grade, and they have begun their schooling with as early as preschool here in Westford, and we've had our difficulties with our children, and it's been challenging. But Westford, the public school system, has done an amazing job in getting them where they are today. The staff has been wonderful. And I would hate to have more cuts to the school system to make the teachers' jobs more difficult, such as, including greater class sizes and making it more difficult and, not as competitive pay. So for these reasons, I am definitely voting yes, and I'm trying to spread the word as much as possible and simply getting public awareness of this. I'm not sure how much awareness there is with working parents, what's at stake for the budget.
Thanks, Susan.
That's it for the moment. Nobody else.
Okay. Last call.
No other public comment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who took the time. We appreciate hearing from you. And that would be the end of our public participation. We are going to move on to informational updates and start with the superintendent.
Thank you. We had our professional development day last Tuesday, March 5th, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of different things that went on. We had a number of different programs. The 6 through 12 educators, for the most part, participated in an ed camp style PD, which we actually did a number of years ago before the world shut down, and it was great to bring that back, which meant that they had a number of different options that teachers could sign up for, ranging from AI in the classroom to behavioral needs. Those are two that jump to the top of my mind, and they were led by our staff, right? So teachers volunteered to run different sessions, and then teachers were able to sign up for the sessions that they wanted to participate in. The feedback that we received was overwhelming, that they really enjoyed the opportunity to hear from their colleagues, to engage in, I think, these meaningful conversations. So I thought that was great. A lot of comments were, can we do this again? Which is always awesome. Another one of the sessions that we had was for all of our special education teachers. We had a day dedicated to the new rollout for the IEP, a new IEP rollout. So I think that was very helpful as well. There were some technology glitches at the very beginning of the day, which I think could cause a little bit of frustration, but I know that, again, the conversations that took place were super helpful, and we got a lot of positive feedback there too. And then another major thing that we had going on was just continuing our EL training, which is the curriculum that we've been rolling out, the ELA curriculum that we've been rolling out in grades 3 to 5. We also had a little bit of a intro for some of our K to 2 staff who haven't been doing that professional development yet. And so I feel like for the most part, it was a really successful day. There was still some critical feedback in terms of, I think it's, this was one of the first professional development days that we had where all of our ESPs were mandated to be a part of the professional development. And we had some that participated in some professional development that they thought was fantastic, and then some felt like it wasn't designed for them. So we're gonna, listen to all that feedback and see what we can do better for the future. But by and large, across the board, I think it was a very successful day. And I appreciate all of the work that went into it. Our curriculum coordinators did a tremendous amount of work organizing the day. And so, my appreciation to all of them, and definitely to all of the presenters from within our district who were leading the charge and working with their colleagues. I thought that was fantastic. And then the only other piece that I had, I don't know if I'll be stealing someone's thunder. If I am, I apologize in advance, but I did receive an email, I think it was early this morning, from the METG, which is the Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild, letting me know before even Mike Towers was able to share the news, they had already reached out to me telling me that our Westford Academy submission of Disgraced was one of the winners at the semifinals and will be part of the finals, the state finals in Boston in 2 weeks. So that's really exciting. And congratulations to them on the hard work that they've done. And there were 90 productions statewide that entered the festival, and 14 go to the state finals, which will take place over 3 days. So we congratulate the students and all the adults that have been working hard on it.
And not to jump around, but there is another public performance added, right? For the
Yeah, next,
Yes,
next Tuesday.
Tuesday night, the 19th at 8 o'clock, you can see the performance at Westford Academy. The performances in Boston, they break them down into different sessions. You can go and see the show in Boston. I'm planning to see it in Boston. But then it's, it's just a little bit of a different time commitment.
Yeah.
You know.
And
When, what date is it on in Boston?
Theirs is
Friday the 21st.
at 8 o'clock
p.m.
at night.
second.
It's 22nd.
22nd, because
22nd, Friday the
the 23rd
22nd.
is town meeting.
That is true.
The 23rd is town meeting, and their performance is 8 o'clock
Thankfully,
on
not
Friday
conflicting.
night, not conflicting with that, just
Exactly.
by happenstance.
And I would just add,
This is going to be a tough
for
one.
those who are thinking about going next Tuesday, the last 2 performances at Westford Academy have had a talk back with the crew and
This
the
one's
cast and
supposed
the
to
director,
as
and
well.
Tuesday will. And
That's
it's such
beneficial.
it's such a challenging play to take in. There's just so much in there that you want to talk about it afterwards, and so that's been really nice to learn a little bit like how they developed it and how they dealt with the sensitive issues that the play raises. So that's to me, I mean, Valerie
Highly
was
recommend
there.
it, yeah. It's absolutely worth going to see.
I will also just add that getting tickets at the state finals in Boston is difficult,
Sure.
because it's 14 different school districts, and all of those, and I think that they're only allowed like certain number of tickets in the first place for the venue. So if you want to see it and you can see it Tuesday night, I would recommend that.
Awesome.
Anything?
Our youngest learners are slowly registering for the 2024-25 school year. Each of the Robinson, Miller, and Nabnasset schools held their preschool lottery for the Play Pals for next school year. That was last week, and we have a small waiting list of candidates who may also be selected for that. And then, as Mr. McKinnon mentioned, last week, Miller School did their registration, with Nabnasset and Robinson welcoming their kindergarten students this week. If parents have missed it, certainly no problem. We are always open to enrollment, and they should reach out to each individual school to register their kindergarten student. The sooner the better for our planning purposes would be appreciated, but of course, we don't turn anybody away at any point.
In one of our next meetings, can we just get a check on those numbers?
Sure.
Thank you. School committee updates. Start over here. Anything? Oh, sorry. Sure.
Oh, well, I have one or two, but I don't know if you
Yeah,
had something,
mine's,
Sean. from-
mine's related to, well, one of them is related to the policy update, so I'll hold on that. But we did have a great CPAC meeting last week. Dr. Chu, Valerie joined us. Was fantastic to have them there, and Mr. Coughlin too joined us. So it was a great, really informative meeting, and a lot of information that we've been talking about here. But it was nice to have that discussion in front of parents who wanted to hear it, and were able to ask some questions that were more targeted toward the special education environment. So.
Thanks.
And just to note as well, there's a Move Up Fair on Wednesday for that CPAC are hosting at Blanchard Middle at 7 o'clock for any parent who has a student in the district at a transition point or coming up to a transition point in the next year or two. It's only something they host, CPAC hosts every 2 years, so if it's happening this year or next year, you might want to attend.
In transition, you mean changing schools?
Changing, yeah, moving up into 3rd grade or 6th grade or 9th grade.
So you could have a first grader, a current first grader, or a current second grader, and attend this Move Up Fair
Yeah,
in anticipation of the transition to third grade.
yeah.
Got it.
And also, and the whole.
Yeah, yeah, and other grades. Excuse me.
Other grades,
Yep.
yes, we're inclusive.
Sorry, did you have other more?
It was actually more just something to say to the committee. I don't know if we want to talk about it just in the town meeting articles, but I know it's something that has come up in a lot of discussions through the budget about really looking at in terms of financing and how we finance our schools and our towns. But really, there's been a resounding kind of conversation also happening about, well, where also is the state? And what can we do on a statewide level? Because some of this is systematic. And so I had a conversation with Alicia Mallon on Friday, who, as you all know, is now our field representative for the MASC, just to really get an idea on what we could do as a school committee moving forward. And as you know, MASC and our conference meeting and our conferences every November have a delegate meeting where they vote on resolutions that essentially give the MASC their goals moving forward for the year as to what they are going to work on, advocate for, lobby for on a statewide basis. And so the process for doing something like that is essentially a school committee somewhere in Massachusetts can either vote themselves to create a resolution that they are going to propose to the MAC. They may also do it as a joint proposal with some other towns. It goes to MASC Resolutions Committee, and then they as a group go through the proposals, and from there it works through to the conference in November. So if it's something that any of us are interested in, and I'm going to potentially throw the policy group out there to maybe if there's interest in creating a resolution that maybe we as a school committee could consider and vote on, that would be proposing for MASC to advocate for specific maybe financial, to have a look at the systematic issues we're finding in terms of funding our schools, and that it's maybe something we might vote on and then maybe seek some other town to support us and just to raise it and advocate for it on a state level. So if you want to reach out and...
So,
Catherine, are you talking about this fiscal year?
No, the MASC has their conference in November, so it will go into, it would go for vote for next year, yeah.
So if anyone's interested, they can connect with you?
Connect with me, yeah.
Great.
And then I'll annoy policy with it.
Great, thanks.
Like we've nothing else to do.
We have nothing else to do.
Any
Policy
other
update.
Updates? Great.
We met last week. We're going to meet again this week because we want to get we have 5 policies in the works right now. I'll just read them out because I don't think I've specifically read all 5, but it's P1505, public complaints about curriculum or instructional materials, P6118, library materials selection and adoption, P6119, textbook selection, P6121, teaching about controversial issues, and P6122, controversial speakers. And so we've talked about this at prior meetings, just trying to get these in line with best recommended practices and looking at a lot of sample or other sample policies and model policies and things like that from groups such as the Mass School Librarians Association, things like that. And so we have drafts that we've been looking at, and what we think we will do is meet this Thursday to make sure we like our drafts and then bring them to the next school committee meeting for a first reading.
Okay.
And we'll do administrative review, so we'll get those to you and talk to you about who should lay eyes on these, because in some cases we probably want some librarians to
Okay.
look at them to see if they have any suggestions or comments. So we'll do that soon.
And apologies in advance. There's a lot of redlining.
Yeah, there's a lot of redlining.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a good segue because our next meeting is off schedule from our Mondays it's moved to a Tuesday just in case the town meeting goes over to the Monday. So mark your calendars for our next school committee meeting.
I'm imagining the
is
scenario where it goes over to the Monday.
March 26th, Tuesday. Okay, so we will all be here around this table, March 26th. Tuesday, okay.
Even if it doesn't need the
Yes.
Monday
We're still
night,
doing
we're
it.
doing
Either
that.
way,
So
yes.
we're changing it to Tuesday
Yes, just proactive.
proactively.
Yeah, okay. I have a couple other.
Sean, I think-
Valerie, can I
Yeah,
jump in
sorry.
real quick?
Yeah.
And it just, I had held this thought because it came to policy's
Oh, sorry, yeah.
attention and wanted to bring it up, alert you folks about it. So Chris, Catherine and I received a request, well, I guess through the chair, received a potential recommendation for the naming of a part of WA. We do have a policy on this, for those who've been following along at home, I think last year.
Yeah, literally
Yeah.
a year ago,
Okay.
yeah.
So last year, so there's a specific policy on it, so now's our chance to kind of put it into action. Per the policy, we're going to have I guess a naming committee form. Unless there's objection from the committee, I'll be the school committee aspect of it. We're gonna try to keep it lean and mean with a few people. We'll work with the folks at WA and the superintendent's office for administrative and potential teachers and the like, and we will need some community involvement too. So more to come on that. Not trying to be cryptic or anything, but it's obviously very early, in the very, very early stages. So hopefully we'll have more after town meeting, maybe April or so. We'll have more of a substantive update beyond that.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
great.
Another update I have is that the League of Women Voters is hosting their usual annual town meeting preview, which is a good place to get some like procedural or logistical information or questions answered. That is this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. virtual, and the link to register for that is on the town website. That's also a reminder that if you want to check your voter registration for town meeting voting, that cutoff is this Wednesday. The registration for childcare or van pickup and drop off is next Wednesday, March 20th. All of these links are on the town website. And again, save the date for Saturday, March 23rd, 9 a.m. start time at Westford Academy. Registration opens as early as 8. There are snacks and coffee being sold. Lunch is also going to be available on site.
For
So-
purchase.
For purchase.
Childcare by the 20th.
What?
Childcare registration by the
Yes.
20th.
Yep, childcare and the van pickup drop-off are like the same date, cutoff for pre-registration next Wednesday, 20th.
Could I also just note, because the Commission on Disability also spoke with the moderator about this, and I actually think it was something that kind of came up, was that maybe people weren't aware, and just it's an opportunity to kind of, bring awareness to it, is the vans that will be doing the shuttle service will be accessible vans. They're the Council on Aging vans. So for anybody who, doesn't get handicap parking in the WA, they'll be able to park at Robinson and Crisafully and still have access with the vans. And also the other point that we were saying that people may not be aware of, there are hearing assist technology that they can have access to, and some braille clickers. If there's any other requests, in terms of translation services or anything, those can actually go in through the town hall at the moment. Clearly we can't do those on the day, but in terms of the hearing assist technology and the clickers, if you ask somebody, a staff member there, volunteer on the day, we will be trying to support that. So
Great,
yeah.
thanks for adding that. Any last school committee updates?
Finance Subcommittee will meet at least once before town meeting. We should also recognize that next week is Neurodiversity Celebration Week. And if you look at our Westford Neighbors most recent magazine, some of our parents, some of our students, one of our school committee members is recognized. Very important read. Community Lego building event at the First Parish Church United, hosted by Westford CPAC on March 22nd, that Friday before town meeting from 3 to 7. I will be there. I recommend others go. It's going to be a great event. So
That's nice.
Okay.
I just had one quick,
It's
a
a
good,
busy
it's a good
week.
segue. I met with,
Maisha is-
I met with
I
some
really
of
am gonna
our.
do students first next time.
I met with some of our student advisory committee members before this meeting. We had a really good conversation. We talked about town meeting a lot, and we talked about ways that we could encourage our 18 and up current students to vote, to get other students to encourage their friends and family members who are registered voters to vote. And so that was a good conversation, and I think there might be some outreach to fellow students and things like that. Thank you.
Great. Last. Anything
Paul?
left?
Okay.
Go
ahead, Maisha, thanks. Student
Take
update.
Alex's seat.
What if she pulled out like a big list right
No, great.
Go first.
So to start on Friday, course selections for WA students ended, and on Saturday the 9th, the digital SAT was given for the first time, at least I believe for the first time, at Westford Academy. So that is the new norm for the SAT. I've never taken the digital SAT, but one of the student advisory committee members did take the digital SAT, and she had positive things to say about it. It's much faster, so much to look forward to there. Today, the submissions for the WA Trustee Scholarship, applications for that, close today at 2 p.m. And upcoming are grade 10 English MCAS. They have that on the 25th and the 26th.
There we go. Great, thank you. Okay, with all those updates, now we are on our first order of business, which is a school choice update.
Yes. So I sent a memo to everyone that we've included in the packet. I just need to find it here so I can look at it. So one of the things that we looked at recently when we were trying to prepare for, okay, what should every year, for people who aren't aware, we look at potential opening slots for school choice. So school choice is something throughout the state of Massachusetts that you, as a school committee, if we decided not to participate in, you'd have to have a public hearing at this point to vote that, and that has not been our recommendation for a while. So what we've been doing is we talk annually about the number of open slots that we would have for the next coming year. And so this memo is to begin that conversation. One of the things that was interesting in this is that for a while, the school committee has had a recommended cap of 73 students for school choice. Until last year, we hadn't been meeting that threshold. Last year, we did open up a number of slots, and we got very close to that threshold. We ended up making an adjustment based on the actual registration of people who are moving into town. So we went from 73 down to 72, and then in February, we actually had some students unenroll because of family circumstances had changed, and so we went down to 69 students. So currently, we have 69 students who are in the school choice program in Westford Public Schools. In looking at our current list, we also have part of our contract with Unit A, with our teachers specifically, allows them to bring their children to Westford Public Schools if it does not create a burden that would require us to hire additional staff. So we have currently 54 students in the district who are not in the school choice program. And so when we were looking at these school choice numbers, one of the things that I had realized was that we had a small handful of students whose siblings were in the school choice program, but when they were joining Westford Public Schools, we didn't have openings in that grade level, so we didn't necessarily think to include them in a school choice lottery. But the way that the regulations for school choice work is that siblings have preferential placement. So this recommendation to you tonight is saying, I think we should increase the number of slots that we have to better capture the students that we're already serving, but we're not receiving any funds for. So we have a handful of siblings of I'll take a step back. Staff members' children who are being supported in Westford Public Schools, where one of the children might have been selected through the lottery process into the school choice program, but the other sibling who came at a different time, there might not have been an opening that we identified, but yet we still took them into the system because it didn't demand that we increase staff. We could now open slots in specific grades that would allow us to bring some of those students who are already students in Westford Public Schools into the school choice program, in which we could receive funding from their resident district for. That's what this memo in the big picture is trying to outline. I gave you more details in the memo than I did in just the general overview. But just with the general overview, does that make sense so far? Okay. So the two grades that are different here is kindergarten and grade 9. So kindergarten, we do have a couple of staff members who are requesting that their children could come to Westford Public Schools, and 2 of them already have children in the district, so we know that if we opened 4 slots, 2 of them would already be selected in. Then the other 2 don't already have children in Westford Public Schools. So in that case, what could happen is you put everybody into the lottery. There's no preferential treatment for staff children at that moment in time. You identify the number of slots. We do that publicly. You'll vote next meeting. You don't have to vote tonight. We'll talk about it more, and then you could vote next meeting. You establish what you think that those slots should be. We are able to adjust it, because the only thing that we have to do is tell the state that we're continuing to participate, and that we have to publicly announce where those openings are. If things change like they did last year, where we had more students enroll in one grade who were actual residents, we decided to remove one of those slots. That's how we ended up with 72 instead of 73. So with kindergarten, if we have 4 slots and 2 of them we know will go to staff members' children because their siblings are already in school choice in the district.
So they don't go into the lottery at all, they automatically get.
Well, technically, the way we've done it is
Yeah.
we do go through the whole lottery process, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know how many people are going to apply.
Yeah.
But what happens is that we just know that this group of names goes literally into the bucket.
Okay.
And if there's any siblings and there's more slots than there are siblings, then we just know that we list those names first, because they get those slots first.
Yeah.
Most of the times there's been more slots than there have been siblings. Just the way we've done it, because we haven't looked at it in this way.
Yeah.
We've just looked at it where the numbers were low in those grades. So with kindergarten, like I said, there'd be 2 students who would automatically be taken in those 2 slots, which would leave 2 open slots. The staff members' kids might get chosen into that slot, or they might not. So at most, we might end up with 4 additional students in kindergarten if you have the 2 staff members' children and then the 2 school choice students. Or it could just be the overall 4 kids, because the staff members' kids could be selected,
Yep.
right? Kindergarten seems to be the easier way to explain that. Grade 9, it gets a little bit more complicated. In grade 9, and this is sort of how this started, because we saw that we had 6 8th grade students who are staff members' kids who are not in school choice. Historically, we have not had school choice openings at Westford Academy. That's a choice we've made as a district for a long time. There's multiple reasons why we've done that. So this started there, where I thought, moving into 9th grade, if we were to open these slots, we could increase the funding that we're receiving from the state for students who already exist within our district. Worst case scenario, we increase the freshman class by 6, right? So in this scenario, 2 of those 8th grade students already have siblings that are in this program. And so therefore, we know that 2 of those slots will be taken by those students. So that even makes I think the number I have in the memo is 7, because we have an anticipated staff member who would like to bring their child into that we haven't committed to. But if this was something we decided to do, we could do this. So that's where the 7 becomes 5. So again, worst case scenario, the freshman class grows by 5 students, which at the academy would not be a large burden as it would be in one single elementary school. But best case scenario, we merely bring students that are already enrolled in Westford Public Schools into the school choice program, and therefore we receive additional funding for them.
Right.
So the way that the second chart breaks down is showing where those other openings are. All of those other openings outside of kindergarten and grade 9 are merely for those siblings. Those are grades where I've identified where the siblings exist who we didn't have openings in their grade previously, so we didn't bring them into the school choice program.
So 2, 3, 7, 11, 12 are siblings?
Yes.
Got it, okay.
Which means that it will be publicized, and people can put their names into the lottery. And every year when we do that, we do create a wait list, because sometimes people change their mind.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do that. And that could be the case here. Any one of these spots, someone could decide they don't want to stay in Westford Public Schools. In this case, with the siblings, the regulations do allow us to provide, to give priority placement to siblings. So it truly has nothing to do with the fact that they're staff members' kids. They get the priority because their siblings had already been selected in a lottery, because we had just gone through the full open lottery process previously when we identified open slots in those given grades.
And once you're in the program.
Once you're in the program, you stay
stay
in,
in. Yeah.
and you remain in.
And the money keeps, the
yep.
funds follow you every year.
Every single year, and you don't have to reapply every single year. So once any child, and that's the state of Massachusetts, throughout the entire Commonwealth, if you are selected into a school choice program, you are then guaranteed that spot through graduation.
Thank
Can
you.
I ask, Dr. Tu?
Questions from the committee?
Sorry. Just to clarify, when we, like you said, when we offer it to staff members, it's based on that there's no additional staff needed for those students. Is that automatically coming in, say, with a student who might have an IEP? Or what happens a year down the road and it's identified within the district that that student maybe needs extra staff support? I'm just kind of curious as to.
That is an excellent question.
Yeah, how that works.
I don't believe, to my knowledge, we have not made decisions to deny somebody based on special education status. And the contract, I think the actual language in the contract is more focused on increasing sections. Like I said, increasing staffing in talking about this, which might be a 1-to-1 or something like that. But I want to say it might say sections, which is a little bit different. But to my knowledge,
We do have staff members who have students who have been identified
Yeah.
as special needs. And clearly, if there was a situation around needing a 1-to-1, that would be a different conversation that the family kind of understands that agreement going in. We've also had a situation in which a student required additional services outside of the public school. And so in that case, we've had delicate conversations, because when we welcome students to the school choice, we are clearly referring to the buildings that are here in Westford, and we're not opening that school choice to private 766 schools or collaboratives. So if there comes a situation in which a family does need to do that outreach, we do connect with the school of origin and partner with that district.
Thank you.
Chris?
I have 2 questions. One is, if in theory in future years we saw that there are even more staff members with children or siblings, would we consider raising it higher than 81.
I would think that with this trend, the reason why we had, and again, honestly, the cap is arbitrary, right? That's just something that the school committee decides based on looking at what our enrollment is. I would say that if that was something that we continued to provide and something that we were still committed to, that we would look at increasing that number so that we're able to, I think, receive funding for students that we're supporting. If you look, basically, the difference between those two graphs is that we've moved students from one column into another column, which is allowing us to receive additional funding. It doesn't change the overall student population by much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My other question was, do we know in the past, have we ever had a situation where a non-staff member sibling was interested, but we didn't open up slots in given turnover, we didn't open up slots in a grade level and a sibling was not able to
Oh, that's a great
come
question.
to Westford? And would we consider, again, same kind of calculus for non-staff siblings, like looking to see if we can have flexibility, like ninth grade flexibility for opening up slots?
Yeah,
Should be.
I don't, in my short tenure, this is where I'm going to say it's been a short time, right? I don't recall over the last couple of years having that question asked. I think it's a great question, though.
But it sounds more like it's a sibling policy as opposed to
That's
a
why,
staff
yeah.
member policy.
It's definitely, that's what you're
Yeah.
The,
asking. You're
the
basically saying-
priority is a sibling, but
Yeah.
that hinges on the fact that you've even opened up slots in that grade
That's
level.
right.
Yeah.
Which we don't always open
I
up
do
slots
know
in every grade
that,
level. right?
you're right, technically, we could say no.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's by the regulations.
I think, I would opine that it'd be nice to look at that, and consider a similar move of expanding when we know that there are siblings,
Yeah.
So
looking for that.
the regulation is that siblings get priority in the lottery if there's openings.
Yes.
But that we don't have to make openings for siblings.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Any questions, comments, clarifying?
Real quick, did they, is it still 4,500 a student, or what's
It's
the rate?
5,000.
5,000, okay, and that hasn't increased.
That hasn't
For
increased.
years,
There is,
right?
when students are identified with a specific special education status, then some additional funds will come to the district. But the base reimbursement for every student is $5,000.
5,000, okay, thanks.
It's very similar to the circuit breaker process that we go through, but we just do it a little bit earlier for our school choice students, so we run their service delivery through that program and comes up with a dollar amount. And in the event that we have a school choice student who has gone out of district, that 100% of the tuition is reimbursed. However, it doesn't come through the special education circuit breaker. It sneaks back through our Chapter 70 into the school choice money. So it does land with us, but sometimes it goes out one person into the next, if that makes sense.
Okay.
One question I had was, can you just remind us of the timing? So,
The timing is, last year we did this in April.
Okay.
It's usually around this time. We don't do the lottery until the summer.
oh, okay, that's what I was
So
asking.
it's the only true timing piece is that is it before July 1 or before June?
June, I
That
think.
the school committee, if you were to change your school choice status as a district,
Right.
we have to alert the state.
Oh, okay.
And that's the hearing. We used to think that we had to have a public hearing about school choice every single year, but then we corrected that information and realized that the only public hearing that has to take place is if the district decides to no longer have school choice as an option, in which case you would have to have a public hearing, you'd have to vote on that, and we'd have to let the state know.
Okay.
What I will be asking you to vote on next meeting will be this recommendation. And that in itself is, like I said, it can still be an adjustment. It's more like we decided when we realized that the public hearing is the only thing that really the state is concerned about. We just thought that the process of having this conversation so that you're a part of establishing those numbers was a good process to have, but you still allow for certain adjustments based on enrollment, like,
Administration recommendation.
yeah, exactly.
The policy actually says May 1st for something, so if, it might be worth checking that.
There's a public hearing notice in there for May, so I think that's no longer needed, so.
It says not later than May
Yeah.
1st of every year, the school committee shall submit a report with the capacity for each school for the following year, and like a bunch
I
of
think
other
that's
things.
when we thought that it was because you had to have the public hearing every single year. You'd want to have it before May 1st so that you could get all your ducks in a row before the state deadline.
Yep.
That's a good thing we should look at.
Yeah.
103.
5103.
Okay, great. Any last, Mari, any questions? I don't want to miss you. Sorry. Good? Okay, thank you. And again, that would be our March 26th meeting.
Tuesday the 26th.
March 26th. Okay. Next, we are going to move on to annual town meeting articles. Oh, I wrote, the agenda says 3:25.
Yeah.
Just noticed that. Here I am correcting it. Annual town meeting articles. So, you know, I think this is a little year by year that the school committee can take a position on articles that impact Westford Public Schools. We can figure that out all together tonight, which ones make sense and what that position will be. The list of articles are on the town website. I hope you have had a chance to become familiar with them. I guess I would start by suggesting that we take a position on Article 1. I took the liberty of putting together a couple of slides because I think that as much as we have tried our best to keep talking about this in a fresh way in case people are entering the conversation at new points, one thing I think we admit is sometimes we haven't done a great job of talking about FY26 and FY27, and I think that directly relates to Article 1, right? So even though we've approved our recommended request for an FY25 budget to town meeting, this would give us an opportunity to sort of reflect and spell out for anyone watching and our families what at this moment what the projections are looking like for FY26 and FY27. So that's just a what's that called, like a level set from high-level graphic from the town website for again that Westford is facing an increase in costs, and we cannot maintain current staffing levels without a permanent tax increase. There's more information there. There's a link right on the town website, right at the top, that gives a great detail. And actually, there's a new property tax calculator
Yeah.
at the bottom of that page that is available for residents to.
So you can literally put in your own address and it gives you the calculated rate specifically for your address.
Yes,
Yep.
for the override.
For the, yeah.
Yep.
If the override passed, what amount it would be.
So, so if you want to go to the next slide, I just wanted to consolidate a lot of the information that we've covered in these meetings for someone, again, that's tuning in for the first time or needs, honestly, the numbers have been changing, so needs one place to just kind of have a snapshot. So I did take the lens of going back to where how did we get here with the budget challenges from last winter. We all of us know at this table, the operations service division allowed an increase of up to 14% for private special education school tuitions. That was versus the historical 3% increases. We do have that in the FY24 budget, and we plan to address that with $800,000 of school choice funds. And then for FY25, we need that to be as part of our operating general fund.
And that's still an approximation, only
Yeah.
because the we're making that adjustment with the school choice funds at the end of the fiscal year, once all of the different costs have been established. Because we've talked about the fact that, special education is constantly a moving target, actually.
Right, projecting. The other budget challenge that we have clearly stated all along for these three increases was, the second one is for a new bus contract. So we were seeing other districts with 15% increases, which would have been a $444,000 increase for FY25. We have negotiated that down to $344,000.
Increase.
Sorry, thank you.
The actual contract
I
is-
know, I did add
great.
the little plus signs. Thank you for that feedback, that these are not totals, these are budget challenges, increases for FY25. And of course, the last one is our commitment to fair pay, which is, to average pay, which is after our rigorous benchmarking, that we identified that Westford teacher salary was 3.2 to 4.2% below average. And again, we used that state list of our DART districts, which looks at our enrollment, grade span, percentage of high needs, percentage of EL students, percentage of students with disabilities, and compares us to districts that have similar students to ours. And then we recently added our adjacent districts to give that grounded geographic piece to that average. And that addition in FY25 is $3,326,392. So those are our three school-related budget challenges. Any clarifying points?
If I could just say
Yes, please.
two quick things. For the bus contract, for people who might just be joining us now, one of the important things to remember is that we are in the fifth year of a contract. And so that's something that has also just happened recently, was that the town voted to allow the school committee to once again potentially enter into a 3-year contract with 2-year extensions. So that's what we were looking at. So it was last year when we were talking about exercising that 5th year extension, knowing that that means that in FY25 you have to have a new contract. So by law, we had to engage in a new contract in FY25. So sometimes people are asking, like, well, why are you entering these contracts at this time if you know that there's a budget challenge? Well, that's the timing of that we had already extended the life of the previous contract as far as we could. And so at that time, we started preparing for the FY25 contract, and we were looking at what the increases our neighbors were seeing. And so we had projected the $444,000. What came in was about that, and we negotiated with the company down $100,000 so that we believe that based on we didn't negotiate with them down that amount. Based on the negotiations, we realized that we could reduce our budget by $100,000. So that's why that is there.
I think it's also important to note while you're having that conversation is that when we go to look for a new contract, we put it out to tender,
Yes, we do.
essentially. And if my memory serves me correct, I think did we have two, is it point interest, or there's two, but only one submission?
Only one submission.
That's the thing.
We had a number of different companies, what they call pull the bid, like so
Pull
they
the bid,
pulled
thank
the
you,
information.
that's this, yeah.
And we had maybe 3 different companies ask us questions.
Yeah,
But only one company submitted
yeah.
a bid. And so then we entered into negotiations with that company, and we've signed a contract. I mean, we can say who it is. It's with the company that's providing services now, because we have already agreed to sign that contract. And then the only other piece that I was just going to add was, again, reminding people that when we talk about our market basket and we talk about these comps, that the DART district is established through very specific metrics by the state, and we followed the best practice that is in the school industry, and we included the adjacent communities, all of our adjacent communities. So we're not just randomly picking communities that we want to compare ourselves to. There is actually a very clear methodology as to why these are the districts that we are comparing our salaries to.
Thank you.
Next one.
Yep, so then if you're thinking chronologically, that was last winter, we identified these, or last winter and spring, we identified these challenges. All summer, we worked on the budget task force and the benchmarking analysis. You all were very patient through a long presentation of mine where I walked through this analysis showing our benchmarking by each of these function codes, showing Westford with a low per pupil spending in all of these areas except for pupil services, which is partially where the transportation and our food service categories fall into. Another important piece of something I hear with these budget conversations is that the budget task force compared our fees. And Westford's fees for across the board were already in the top 4 to 5 of our peer districts. So just level setting with that piece of information, that work that we've done. You wanna, and then finally, just to remind everybody, the work that we have done since, and administration have done, Jenny, thank you, since December for our FY25 school budget. With the original projected increases coming out of FY24 with those challenges was up at $71,279,331. With our yearly level service adjustments that include enrollments changes based on declining enrollment, sections at the elementary and middle school, also this year some adjustments at WA. Reduced software subscriptions, increased offsets, addition of a special education program for ages 18 to 22 students, outsourced special education transportation, and a reduction of 1.0 FTE at central office. That level service budget was $70,505,124. Then we went through a lengthy budget review process, including finance subcommittee, the town finance committee, and after those meetings the select board instructed Westford Public Schools to lower by $788,288. Chime in if I'm misspeaking.
I wouldn't necessarily use the word instructed.
Okay.
Right? They recommended us to make an addition, the next reduction. Their target was around that number.
Yep.
Based on when we combine, because most of it at the time we are talking about individuals, and so it's harder for it to meet a specific number.
Yep.
So our number is a little bit higher than what they were asking us to reduce.
Yeah.
But it was
Thank you.
around that target.
Okay. And so that number that we did approve at our February meeting was $69,716,836. And that does include things that we heard from the budget review process, the community, of additional use of our offsets, and 3 FTE from admin. So one of those challenges that I think I was going to move this slide around, sorry, but when we look at those 3 challenges, I thought it would make a little sense to just clarify the changes in special education out of district costs. So you can see the comparison from FY24 to FY25 and that estimated school choice offset. This is all information that was already in the original superintendent's budget presentation from December. Again, was just hoping to try to keep things in one place.
I will say,
if for no one else than me.
right. Well, I will say the one thing that is slightly different is that these are more real-time numbers.
Okay.
So when we last looked at the FY24 numbers on that slide, those were projections that were included in the FY24 budget process. And so these numbers are real-time numbers. So those are the students that are actually in these placements. And one of the things that we didn't have reflected in our FY24 budget process, although we talked about it frequently. So you were all aware, and I think the public was aware of it, was that we knew that we were going to need to use one-time funds to close the gap with the increase, the 14% increase. So the total out-of-district costs here reflects what we anticipate at the end of this year it will actually be. That number in my presentation for FY24 didn't include the $800,000. So the number, it was I think $5.6 million. But we knew that the costs were going to increase. We just didn't know what the number was going to be. Now that we're, 3/4 of the way through FY24, we're able to now say these are what the numbers are looking like, and this is what we're anticipating the final numbers to be. So that then when you look at the FY25 numbers, the big thing for people to remember and understand is that the increase, the 14% increase for private programs took place in FY24. But because we didn't know until FY24 even started whether there was going to be more funding from the state, whether all these prices were actually going to hold true, we didn't know any of that. And so we had decided, well, we'll deal with what the one-time funds look like, but we'll build it into FY25 because we know that it's not sustainable for us to continue to pay for that with one-time funds. So that's why the FY25 budget, if you look at this slide, you'll see the increase is in general fund. So the general fund in FY24 was 2.4 million. The general fund in FY25 is 3.2. And so that's where the bulk of this we have to build that offset into our general fund, because that's the sustainable and appropriate way to do that.
Thank you. The next two are slides that we created for last week's, was it last week? Budget
I
forum?
think so.
The budget forum that you may have tuned in to watch.
It was last Monday.
Yep, great.
In this room.
That's right. So I was hearing this from people too, like they wanted one place to be able to see town and school override and no override impacts. I can't fit FY25, 26, and 27 all together, so it's one slide for FY25. We all know the school impacts spread out here. But I think it is helpful even for families who tune into school committee meetings to see what is being proposed on the town side with no override, and to not become numb to our own school no override reductions, which are a reduction of elementary literacy specialists, middle school reading teachers, a reduction of student support intervention model from 30 FTE reading and math interventionists to 6 FTE academic coaches, and an additional reduction of 15.4 FTE classroom teachers across K to 12. The total's a loss of 50.4 instructional staff. Any clarifying? Okay, that's all stuff we know. And then slide 7 again. So here's where I think ties into the business at hand, which is Article 1, where our town meeting is going to take a vote, and we can take a position on Article 1, which doesn't just impact FY25. There are, the strategy would address FY26 and 27. This breakdown shows you what further reductions the current projections would ask of the schools. So in FY26, after losing the 50.4 instructional staff that we just talked about in FY25, we would be looking at an additional 2.7 million in reductions. And in FY27, an additional reduction of 1.3 million. And obviously, being that far out, I don't want to speak for you, but we don't get that specific when we're talking about personnel, I think was the word I was looking for. But if you want to just, one question I hear is, are these threats, is the scare tactics? And I think one point to make is that the math supports, like there's no way to make this math work
Right.
without touching personnel.
That's right.
So about 80% of our total budget is staff.
Yep.
And then I think even if I went down to the personnel number, it's 76% of all staff is in the category of teaching staff. So
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
you, like, you can't, building and ground staff, other secretarial staff, support, educational staff, all of those are separate compared to 76% of teaching staff.
Yes.
So for someone who's wondering, how come it's, the people facing, the student-facing positions, that's just the sheer fact of
Well,
the problem.
it is, because, you're right, because the percentage that is the larger group of people in the first place. And there are certain positions that we have to have, right, in order to stay open, in order to make sure that we're meeting everybody's needs in general too, that aren't necessarily student-facing. And additionally, we do have positions that we know have truly been the backbone and support for all of that work in the first place, that students might not necessarily see. I mean, they still do see them, but they might not necessarily see them as often as they see their classroom teacher. One of the things that I'd like to maybe highlight is when I look at the memo that the town has established that talked about the different override scenarios and talks about the accumulating number of reductions that takes place either in an override scenario or in a non-override scenario, in both cases. They've used a similar methodology to what I've been talking about for the last couple of years, which is we identify a target. And we say that when we talk about our professional staff, we've been using Master's Step 4, which is the right in the middle of our group of professional staff, which has a $66,000 price tag to it. We know that that's an average. We know that not every position would cost us and or save us that amount, depending on if you're adding or subtracting the position. We know that. But it's an average. So what the town has done is taken the overall number of the budget that we know that the budget, we were able to project out what that budget looks like, and then just divide it by a specific target. They've decided to use 70,000. So, and I share that because if you look at what is in their memo for FY25, it is a different number than what we've been presenting the whole time. The difference here is that the entire time we've been talking about FY25, we've been talking about actual positions. We've been talking about actual positions that equates 70.2 people. Because they've divided the number by 70,000, the approximation that they have is 42. So when people see that, I want them to understand why that's the case. Because not all of our staff members make $70,000 a year. Matter of fact, when we talk about our drivers, and when we talk about interventionists, and when we talk about other support roles, they don't make that much money. So it takes more of those positions in order to add up to that number, which is the unfortunate reality. So I want people to understand that when we're talking about it, because if they look at what the town memo says, which I think is accurate in the methodology in which they've done it.
Right.
And if they then look at what we've said, they'll see that those are two different numbers. So I share that for this reason, because when we look at what the town is projecting out over 3 years, if an override does not pass, is that over 3 years, we would lose 100 positions. My concern is that if in year one, they're saying 42 and we're saying 70.2, over the course of 3 years, it could be significantly higher than 100 as well too. Based on, but the financial number would be the same.
Correct.
But it could actually be a different number of employees based on the salaries of those employees.
Right, and I think we sort of talked about this a little in a previous meeting, which was, it's hard for someone to think about what is the impact of $2.7 million, right? So although it's not perfect, that methodology does help give some context for like, how many positions would this equate to, right?
That's true. And the other piece, maybe the more positive piece of that, is that when we look at the memo that has the 100 positions, that's not including efficiencies or additional offsets, right?
Right.
So that's another thing, right? That they're just taking the number, and they know that 80% of your budget is based on people. So there is an assumption that all of that will have to be made up with people, and that might not be the case as well.
I know it's a lot. Any clarifying questions? Because, so this next slide is my attempt, this is not, is my attempt to break all of this down. So something that you see in the town memos is a lot of reference to cumulative impact, and I just don't think a lot of our brains think like that, right? So we could say cumulative impact over 3 years of $7 million for the schools, but we start fresh with a balanced budget every year. So what would we, I wanted to see as an exercise what that would mean each year for, oh, that was
No, I can't.
in progress. I wanted to see each year we would have to start a budget process and say, without an override, in FY26, we would be sitting down and looking at a budget that needs to close a gap of $3.9 million. Sorry, as a town, and then 2.7 as a school. I know it's a lot. The other thing that's different about the town memos and this chart is that they because it's like an accounting way of looking at accounting methodology, I backed out the reductions. So you can see that like these are my fancy terms. New deficit to fix each year. So if you look at like Dan's tables, he'll include this deficit in the next year's costs, and then he'll back it out below as like a cumulative deficit.
Yeah.
But that's not how my brain works, right? So, and it's not really how municipal budgeting works, right?
Right.
Because you would balance each year and then start fresh again.
Yeah.
So, with an override in FY26, we are signed up for town-wide an additional $700,000 in reductions. With an override in FY27, we are planning an additional $1.1 million of reductions. Here's a potential projected school reductions, 490, 770. Everybody with me?
Under a
That's
similar percentage.
70-30,
Yeah,
yeah.
70-30 that we're looking at.
Without an override, which again brings us back to Article 1, we are looking at the current reductions that we just talked about for FY25, but we would start FY26 with if there's no override, by needing $2.7 million of reductions on the school side. And FY27 would be an additional $1.3 million. So when we talk about whether or not to support an override for town and school operating budgets, and people say, just manage your budgets differently, just figure it out, just, move things around. This is the gaps that we would be asked to close without an override.
Well, I think,
And also by that idea of
Yeah.
compounding, right, the ball as years roll along, by your measures here, taking it on the chin this year makes a lot of sense, right? Because we're not, I'm just looking at the 700,000, even in the override scenario right
Yeah,
now.
right.
700,000 to the town,
Yeah.
Yep,
0.1,
Yeah.
Yes.
versus a 6.8, right?
Right.
I mean, that's a stark number to a lot of people. We
Right.
recognize that.
yep,
But then look at, what that means, the cascading effects.
right. And I think that not to lose sight of that, that the select board has picked that number.
Yes, it's a strategic.
And that there is a responsibility on our end as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other,
Thi-
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, this might be, I mean, I've heard people ask the question, when you look at the override scenario, and then you see the use of stabilization fund, that then says $400,000, and then in FY '27 and FY '28, the use of $1.1 million of stabilization funds. Can you talk to the conversations that have taken place as to what happens in FY '29, when those stabilization funds aren't there?
No.
Okay.
Can I?
We
I
pray.
don't remember.
Well, I think that, when those questions
Wait,
have come up,
yeah.
that's when, in many cases, people have been talking about the idea of providing a long-range
Yes,
plan and
sorry.
time to then look at, by the time we do anticipate realizing any sort of
Thank you.
revenue from the MBTA communities, if that is something that moves forward in town. There are things that, in which when we look at the projections, we believe that that would not create a fiscal cliff.
Correct. Thank you. Sorry. And Articles 2 and 3 are about the creation of the stabilization fund and the funding of the stabilization fund. And what that does is, I got clarification on this today, if Articles 2 and 3 don't pass, you're only allowed to raise your tax levy to balance your budget. So even though the ask is 6.8 million, because we're saying these costs are increasing, the general fund cost here is increasing for the next 3 years. It's not just this deficit that we're addressing. The stabilization fund allows you to draw from that over the next 2 or 3 years so that they aren't such big step increases. But if so that's why Articles 2 and 3 help create that stabilization fund.
Go back. If they don't pass, what does that say
That
about
means
the
you
amount?
can't- It means you can't raise,
The tax levy would
The
only go
tax
up
levy.
4.2 million, not
Right.
6.8.
But we'll have already voted on Article 1.
We're not allowed to because it doesn't have a place to go. The stabilization fund gives it a place to go.
That's first?
No, that's
Oh.
2 and 3.
So the assumption is that if Article 1 passes of the 6.8, we would assume, but never assume anything, we would assume Article 2 and 3 would pass because the town would have already voted for that stabilization fund. And Article 2 and 3, my understanding, is just kind of the organizational work. It allows us to open up that fund and put money into it. If Article 1 is amended on the floor, that's another question.
I mean, these are,
I'm not even
at some
going there.
point, my expertise taps out, and we
Yeah.
will have to funnel these questions to town manager and even to the League of Women Voters
On
town meeting
Wednesday, yeah.
preview, where all of our elected
Yeah.
officials our town staff is more equipped than I.
Yeah.
But again, for a school point of view, what I was trying to make clearer for our families is by pulling this data out of the select board memos to see the choice in front of us and the choice in front of voters of two very different futures.
And
Okay.
basically, we're looking tonight at what we're doing in terms of supporting each of the article.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
I think it's also worth noting, these costs aren't going to go away.
Right.
Like, any of the increases
Oh,
we've seen.
thank you.
Are,
Can I
I mean,
jump
the
in
big
for-
one being labor, yeah.
So one other question I've gotten on this and clarified with Dan is, our town finance director, is the deficits are different in the two scenarios. Because the costs are escalating in FY '25 and FY '26. And with no stabilization fund, no flexibility, you have to balance your budget, right? So you're facing those harsh reductions right away. So that actually means that, like, in a no override budget, you've got no other choice than to face the music of 4.2 deficit and a 3.9 deficit. What the funny thing about that is that it actually means that in FY '28, you have less of a deficit than you do.
Yeah.
Is anybody following that?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. I figure it's like that teaching thing. If I know it well enough to explain it, then I'm
We'll need to get you a pointer for next time.
learning. Okay. So that was my, I wanted to set the stage for our Article 1 conversation. Any clarifying points? Can you go off the slide?
You want me to?
Well, next is just a,
Okay.
for anyone watching at home,
Oh,
but things
okay.
we've already.
Just leave it there.
Yeah. So any comments anyone wants to make on their position or opinion on Article 1, and then we will entertain a motion if there's one made.
You want to go, Chris?
No, go ahead. You go
Okay.
first.
Valerie, I can't thank you enough for putting that together. No, seriously,
Translation.
I think what you captured is how much work went into this, how much of it is trying to hit a moving target. And I think what you captured very, very well in 4 slides is the how grave the situation actually is. And I think people, if this is the first school committee meeting that you're tuning into since we've started, welcome aboard.
Glad to have you.
Glad to have you. There are 2 very important votes coming up. It's going to pass through both. So it's very important that people who are concerned about this show up and voice their opinion on Saturday, March 23rd. So,
Yep, thank you.
I was going to back up a little bit and look at the bigger picture of all the town meeting motions and just sort of the philosophical question of us weighing in, because I think that's something that's been raised because we haven't always done this. I mean, last year we did it on a town meeting article and we wrote a whole resolution to address it. And so, speaking from my opinion only, I think it does make sense. I think there's times when people would look to this committee for what we think. It's obviously, people can choose to pay attention or heed our recommendations on anything or ignore it in this case, right? This is not an official action of the committee per se, rather than us recommending or not recommending. And so I do think people look to us as leaders and expect us to be paying attention very closely to these, a lot of, not only what's going on with the schools, but what's going on in the town. So I would argue that there is a case for us to make, to vote on a recommendation for any number of articles or motions, including the first one, the override. So I just wanted to kind of set the stage for
Yes, thank
how
you.
I feel about that. I don't know if that was even an open question, but I feel like we hadn't talked about that. Because I have a list of ones that I feel like it makes sense, because they're things that are going to impact the schools. And not only do people look to us as folks who've been elected to do and promote the business of the town and to keep an eye on and understand what's going on, we also have a role in advocacy in this situation, right? We can potentially influence or attempt to how people feel about different things from a position of us wanting to do what's right by the town and by the schools. And a number of warrant articles do have influence on schools, not just the override.
Yep.
I mean, you could argue a lot of them, and my list doesn't include as many as you could, but
Yeah.
but there are any number.
And that's a great question, because you're right, that it hasn't necessarily been common practice for us. And the Finance Committee book is printed and online, and available at the library, Senior Center, Town Hall. And so they do post, they do include votes in those of, like, the select board or the FinCom recommendations. So obviously we won't be printed in those, but there is a motions booklet for attendees to town meeting. And if we take positions tonight, I was gonna send any results to be included in the motions booklet. Any last thoughts on in general, or?
Well, no, I completely agree with what Chris was saying, is that any of the articles that pertain or impact the schools, I think we absolutely should be taking a position one way or the other on them. But coming back to Article 1, I mean, I come at this as obviously a parent of kiddos who have used the various support services and staff members we have in our district. Also come at this as a teacher as well and understanding how the classes work. And I think as we're coming, thinking through this, this article in particular, we also have to bear in mind we're only 3 years out, if even 2 years out, from the impact of COVID. And I think now more than ever, we need to be just not only funding our schools, but funding our town. We talk a lot about public safety on the town side of stuff, but I think one of the positions that is potentially up for a reduction or a cut would be our community wellness coordinator. If I forgive me if I've got the title wrong. And I think for me, I put that completely in the world of public safety in this day and age. And we're hearing the stories of how our kids and people are feeling coming out of COVID, and I just think this is a time where we need to be funding all the supports as we get through these next few years. But on the other side is, I don't take it lightly what we're asking for people. It's not an easy number. We're very aware that there are families in this town who will struggle with this, and people who are on fixed income again. And again, we keep saying as well, we're stressing there are supports out there and tax exemptions in various shapes and forms. And I really encourage anybody to, go into town hall and connect with the staff there if there's any questions they have about trying to ascertain that. And the timeline is coming up on that, I believe, for getting those exemptions. But I think really this boils down to, this is our values as a community. What do we value as a community? What do we see as the place we want to raise our kids and also potentially grow old in? And hopefully we will all be in this Cameron Senior Centre in many years to come when all this is passed. But so I would absolutely be, and not taking it lightly, but I would be supporting it. I wish the number was lower, but we've all seen the costs jump up on everything in the last 3 or 4 years, and to think that was never going to impact our town budgets in the way we fund our towns in the state would be naive of us. And so, yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? Chris ran away.
We can hold off until he gets back.
Does everyone else have thoughts on which articles we're thinking about? I guess we could sort of figure out where we're going to go after Article 1. I do want to honor Chris and.
Can I just check if Mari wants to weigh in?
Yep.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Sure.
Mari, if you wanted to add anything, I don't want to miss you.
No, it's fine. No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
So I support taking a position on Article 1. I think Article 2 and 3 could be with it or not, whatever we think. Are you back? Good. Okay.
Motion to recommend Article 1?
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a roll call vote. Chris?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Valerie's aye. I'm an aye. Sean?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mari?
Aye.
Thank you.
6.
Thank you. 6-1. Okay. Article 2. Does anybody have a burning desire to take a position on Article 2?
I feel like it goes with Article 1.
I was about to
I don't
say.
think anybody's going to be dying to know.
I think by supporting 1, we're already supporting 2 and 3.
Yep.
We're also being fiscally responsible to the future, and if we're thinking about bumps and conflicts ahead, we should be thinking about how we navigate these waters in the future, and the stabilization fund addresses that, so
Yeah.
I would be in favor.
My only suggestion would be that based on your vote to recommend Article 1, that you do recommend the other articles.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm hearing from you that you're saying, oh, we just already did, so we don't need to worry about the
No,
other
I
2.
think we should.
Whereas I feel like,
Commission.
Yeah.
Right, and there will be people who will say, no, they might not necessarily agree with the stabilization
Yep.
aspect
Right.
and only want to deal with the $4.2 million, in which case we'd find ourselves going through this process again, which I know has also been a legitimate concern of people. Are you going to come back and ask for another override?
Right.
So I would encourage you to consider
I think we should.
whether you should align yourself with the warrant articles that are
Yeah.
in alignment with what your first recommendation is.
Okay.
Should we do a motion to
Motion to
reconsider?
recommend Articles 2 and 3.
Oh, just have one motion.
Oh, to do.
I was just going to suggest if we could do it in one motion, but that's fine.
Jesus.
That's fine.
You're complicating
No,
things.
nope,
like-
nope. Just go with that second.
To reconsider what?
No, no,
No,
just
ignore
motion
him. I
to
said
recommend
motion.
2 and 3.
Motion to recommend Articles 2 and 3.
Great. Second.
Great.
Chris,
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Mari.
Aye.
Thank you. So, my proposal for Article 4 would be to wait. The Select Board and the Finance Committee are leaving that to the floor of
Mhm.
town meeting. Any pushback, thoughts on that? Or we can keep going?
Mm-hmm.
Article, where am I? 5?
Yep.
Someone keeping track?
Town
Yep.
reports.
Accepting
If we
town
don't,
reports.
if we don't take a stand on that,
Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to take a stand on, guys.
Article 6 is sealer, budget supplemental appropriation, sealer weights and measures expenses, snow and ice, not school-related. Article 7, say hold, I guess.
Yeah, why do we do that? Yeah.
Article 7, appropriate for perchlorate expenses. Article 8, approve capital appropriations.
Yes.
Hold.
Well,
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, so there is our school's request there is
School's
for
request in there.
$125,000 for a special education EV van purchase and
Yeah.
equipment. Okay, I'll take a motion to recommend Article 8, schools,
Seconded.
school's request of $125,000. I'm sorry, who was the first? Who was the motion? Chris to Bill? And all in favor, Chris?
Just real quick point of clarification. I mean, we're recommending the whole motion, right? Because people will have to vote. I mean,
This is
people
all
can put
together.
holds and things like that.
So they actually have done it, broken out for a vote, so I was gonna,
Oh,
Yeah. So
okay.
you don't have to support them all. You can just put in what you
And-
want.
Because people are,
and to just
because people
follow-
can,
well, I was thinking
Pull things
just
out.
kind of what's in our lane.
yeah, that's fine.
School computer replacements and technology.
I'm just trying to
Yep.
figure out what's
Here's-
most effective for the voter, that's all,
Yeah,
you
good
know.
point,
Okay.
Bill.
But that's fine if
So,
if it's going to be printed,
What's-
broken out, if our recommendations
DPW,
can be printed, broken out, then
all
fine.
wastewater, that separates.
okay,
that's
Bill
separate.
reminded me that we have a school computer replacements of $397,972, $2.
Is the Stony Brook
Stony Brook.
on there, or did that move?
No, that's in community preservation,
Mm.
yeah. So I'll take a motion to recommend, I'll make a motion to recommend the school computer replacements and the special education EV van.
Oh, I was just about to question the Hartford Road traffic calming measures. Is that by any chance something to do with the traffic? I've heard quite a number
Yes.
of residents on that road, specifically in and around pick up and drop off times at WA, having issues on that road, and I'm just wondering.
I suspect
Is
that's what
it-
that is.
Yeah, is that something we should also be considering supporting, because it's being directly impacted by our school community?
Are you making a motion?
I would be, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we include it,
Okay, so that's those three.
those three. Technology, school computer replacements, schools, special ed, EV van, purchase and equip, and the Hartford Road traffic calming measures.
Great.
And then we also have Stony Brook Middle School wastewater
I don't think
and
that's-
Blanchard Middle
I don't
School
know if that
wastewater.
directly affects us.
Doesn't, yeah.
It's more of a town project, but.
Yep.
It gets a little
Open to the-
complicated when you start pulling
Open
them
to the
out like
will.
that.
Are they
Okay,
really
here.
going to print it next to each line item, our recommendation?
I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing you want to be careful about is you don't want someone to misunderstand
the-
your,
No, I didn't-
your
that's not the one I
non-vote
opened. Oh, it's
to
the
be a vote
I haven't-
against
yeah,
if you're going to be.
Open-
would just be my
Open to the will of
concern.
all six of us. This is real-time deliberation here.
I'd be inclined to vote for entire articles.
The whole
I will
thing?
just, well, I would just remind, I
I
just
wouldn't-
throw this out there
yeah.
that Valerie, Valerie and I both sit on the capital committee. Jenny is an alternate on the capital committee. So we've already been a part of this process where we have already voted and cast our individual votes for or against
Yeah.
different articles. And my only concern, since seems to be a new thing that you're doing, is that to vote for the whole warrant as you're doing other things, that makes sense. If you start spreading them out like that, I would be concerned that a voter would then misread your
I think that's true.
Yeah.
vote and then not support something just because you didn't think it had anything to do with the schools. They would actually think that you didn't support it.
Yep.
And that might not be fair.
But I also worry about doing a blanket support where
Yeah,
there's a
we
lot of
couldn't.
nuances
Yeah.
to some of these.
True.
Yeah.
I-
So do we choose
I'd,
not to
I'd be more inclined to do that than
at all?
with the risk. No, with the risk. You know, individual, I don't know.
Or maybe we get a little bit more information in the future and you don't actually vote on this warrant. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
maybe this is one that you choose not to have a
Learning
specific
experience, yeah.
specific
could-
statement on,
and, I
because
mean, we-
again,
Sure, sure.
We do
we-
have
we were members on
representatives,
capital.
Yeah,
yes.
it's it's the most complicated of them all,
We
right? It has the
all-
most individual
We
things.
already voted on the EV van.
Mhm.
didn't
We don't,
Sending
we don't
it-
actually take a vote.
You don't, but
vote.
we knew that it came to you. I mean, as far as the things that were school-related, they
Yeah.
came to you.
Exactly.
And again, you know,
We do have
there-
representatives on.
you have
capital.
representatives
Exactly.
on this committee,
Yeah.
unlike other things.
So yeah, my take is now almost anything that's already there that's school related has already got the support of the committee in the first place.
And then we can kind of maybe get a better understanding for the future as to what that
I-
read would be.
I would like, I think that sounds good to me if the original motioner is willing to pull theirs.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Was it really?
Oh, I have Chris and
I
Bill.
will, I will withdraw
Thank you,
As will
okay.
I.
All
motion. It
right.
might be one of those things that, at town meeting, item by item, that we can
You
go
could.
to the,
That's
take
right.
the microphone and also,
If people ask that question,
you
Yeah.
know.
Okay, great.
certainly was discussed.
There we go.
Good learning
We're doing our
experience.
due diligence.
Article 9 is to approve construction of PFAS treatment plants. Article 10 is to approve Community Preservation Committee recommendations.
Old. Isn't there something?
Yes.
The courts.
There is
Yeah.
a
The track. Sorry, the track.
a Nabnasset playground for $725,000 and a Stony Brook Track and Athletic Courts construction project for $2,220,000.
I mean, do we have to vote on it? It has our names behind it.
It's a fair question.
It feels a little bit like capital in that we have a representative who
Yeah.
makes,
Yeah.
like Jeff Goodwin makes these,
Yeah.
Recommendations.
recommends these,
Yeah.
puts these projects through the process. They have gone through the capital planning
fair.
process. This is just the funding mechanism for it.
We wouldn't be not recommending, double negative there, sorry, but we wouldn't be not recommending something that we've put forward.
That's gone through, yeah.
The only difference, devil's advocate, the only difference is that you have you have voting members on capital.
Capital.
We don't
and
have a
non-
You
CBC.
do not.
That's very
So
true.
you did, Jeff Goodwin did present this, but you as a committee don't have voice on that on that voting committee. I'm just throwing that out there. I still think you're better off not weighing in on things
Yeah.
new at this point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
And I just think it's
But it's-
under our name. It's,
Yeah.
well,
great.
your name.
It's great practice. Okay. Any final thoughts there? I'm gonna move us on then. Article 11, authorize revolving funds. We do have a school parking and school bus transportation on there, but we haven't taken a position on those before. They obviously affect our expenditure limit that goes up every year. Article 12, appropriate Chapter 90 local transportation funds for roadway maintenance. Are you guys going to make me read all these? Article
No.
13,
No, I'm going through them.
appropriate funds from water enterprise other post-employment benefits stabilization fund to the water enterprise budget. Article 14, Article 15, Article 16.
The 16
And-
impact NAB students
it's-
walking to school.
It's the
That's the
second
easement,
part,
sorry, yep.
and it's the second part of the project down by Grassy Pond.
Okay, so we feel good about
Could
that.
I throw back to Article 14 there for a second?
You've missed it.
You didn't say hold?
I was processing, I'm a slow processor. We voted to support Article 1 tonight, which obviously is asking to increase our town budget. Article 14 is asking for a property exemption for veterans. And I'm just wondering, should we, as a group, considering we're supporting the override, be also supporting tax exemptions for our community members, regardless? And saying that we may have parents who qualify for this.
Speaking for myself, I don't know the details of this, so I would ask maybe that if we feel strongly about it, we could take a vote on town meeting floor.
Okay.
But I'm one of 6, so if,
I'm not sure anybody's looking to us for our opinion on that as well. Doesn't mean,
Select Board and
Yeah.
FinCom apparently have recommended it.
where did I leave off?
17.
Article 17 is a floodplain zoning bylaw.
I have some
Article,
thoughts on that.
Article 18 is authorize the MBTA community's multifamily housing overlay district zoning bylaw.
Hold.
Hold, I hear a hold.
Let's discuss.
Let's discuss.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think,
To open us up for.
sure, I think it touches on our work in 2 ways. One is, there's a lot of discussion about the potential impacts to the schools of bringing in multifamily housing and the number of students that could increase. So I do think people are looking to the school committee to say, are you comfortable with this? And the other piece is the potential for revenue generation. And given everything else we've been talking about, I think, we might have an opinion on that as well as a way of bolstering future budgets
Yep.
when it comes to revenue.
Maybe you could give a 35-second version
Of which? Of
Of
the,
What it is.
of.
of what it is.
Yeah.
Overall, okay. State law saying that if you're a town that has or is adjacent to a town that has an MBTA facility, you have to amend your zoning bylaws to allow for, by right, multifamily housing, because you don't have to, like Westford, that would be a special, I think a special permit or something. And so you have to allow it by right, and there's a minimum number of units, multifamily housing units, that you would have to allow for. It doesn't mean they have to get built, but you cannot restrict your zoning in such a way that that number could not be achieved.
Has to have the potential to be developed.
potential.
Yeah.
And for us, that number is 924 units. There was an advisory committee and then planning board have put forth the bylaw change that actually identifies zoning overlay districts that would potentially allow for many, many more units than that, but in reality probably wouldn't, just due to other factors of how developers are going to develop. But, that is something that's, people should know, that the potential is quite a bit more than 924,000, or 924 units, not 1,000 units. And so.
I think the numbers I heard, sorry, I've been
Yeah, go
through the
ahead. Yep,
presentation
yep.
4 times, and I've actually since heard misinformation out there about the numbers. So just to clarify, I think from my understanding was Jeff Morissette had said there was the potential for up to maybe 5,000 units,
I
but
think that's-
actually realistically, he said once potential developers start looking at drainage, wetlands,
Exactly.
land available for, with septic and all the other stuff that I don't know. He said realistically, the most that could probably be built would be between 2,000 and 3,000.
I think that
I
sounds
had,
right.
I literally had a resident say 9,000 to me. Which was.
So I think those numbers
Yeah.
are accurate. Something else worth knowing is that if you look at, and there have been studies, I think, that show, and it depends on the town, depends on the circumstances, but, the new business opportunity or new growth opportunity versus the drain on town resources of a large number of new units in a town, it's usually, it's not clearly necessarily a detriment. Often it's a benefit when you look at the way it equals out in the end. And also, it's worth noting that, and again, this depends on the town and the development, but you don't get as many students per unit by a long shot with multifamily as you do with single-family homes, which we have now. So, and we've seen that the impact of past things, there has been an impact. We do have more students, but it hasn't been a dramatic. In fact, we saw that we were preparing for this large ramp up and it never really materialized, and so it hasn't been a dramatic impact. There is an impact, though, that this zone is along Route 110, pretty much entirely in Powers Road a little bit, and it's just worth noting that's all south of 495, and we don't have any schools south of 495. So that's a consideration of something in the future, or to think about. It's just the distribution of students in town.
Any other thoughts on Article 18?
I think we should also be considering this in relation to our staff. You know, there's not necessarily a lot of
Thank you.
Housing available to affordable housing in some way, and I'm not saying this will all be affordable housing, but at least to have
Tiers of housing.
Tiers of housing, of options available in our community. I think it's really important. And the other thing I also think, you know, we should be considering is that more footfall. It's not just necessarily numbers. This will hopefully encourage more businesses and retail to open up within Westford. So,
Yep.
yeah. But I think
Okay,
I'll definitely be in favour.
great. Any final
Mari?
thoughts?
Oh,
Okay, thought I saw a hand wave. Okay, so did anyone make a motion on that yet?
go on, Chris.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 18.
And I'll
18
second.
and a second. Okay, Chris?
Aye?
All in
Aye.
favor, sorry. Chris?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mari?
Aye.
Thank you. Article 19, solicitation and canvassing door-to-door by bylaw. Article 20, civil fingerprinting bylaw. Article 21, authorize the cemetery commission and select board to adopt and amend policies and regulations. Article 22, Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples' Day.
I think we
Hold.
need to hold.
Okay, open to discussion on Article 22. Citizens petitions. Shall the Westford Select Board declare the second Monday in October as both Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples' Day, superseding the previous declaration that eliminated Columbus Day, with appropriate exercises in the schools and throughout the town to recognize the positive contributions of each group? That's confusing, because Columbus isn't a group,
Yeah.
but, okay.
I think when they say group, they maybe mean like Italian
Americans,
yeah,
yep.
which kind of sits in the Columbus Day.
Because it was the DEI committee's proposal to name
So
October?
the DEI committee,
an entire
I'm trying to
month.
think, what, 2 years ago,
Yeah.
did surveys and they proposed, it went to the ballot, and on that ballot, it won by 15 votes to only refer to that, what is it, the third Monday in October, or second Monday in October, as Indigenous Peoples' Day. And I don't know, Bill, if you remember, I don't think you were on the school committee, we came out and wrote a resolution.
Adopted
There
March
you go.
13th, 2023, by a vote of 4-1 on
Mhm.
Monday, on a Monday meeting.
Yeah.
Westford School Committee resolution related to the recognition of Indigenous Peoples' Day in Westford, yes. So we voiced our support for the ballot measure at the May 2nd, 2023 town election.
Yeah, and I think the reason, if I remember the discussion, was based on the wording as well of the ballot question. It specifically spoke about education in Westford, and I think that was kind of the reason we weighed in on it.
Yep. We had
yes,
some great discussions, too.
We really did, I think so.
With our student representatives at the
Yeah.
time, too.
So this is a citizen's petition that's come up, and there was some suggestion of potential, maybe a compromise of, instead of it being Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples' Day, that it would be considered like either Italian Heritage Month or Italian American Heritage Day, but the petitioners have not agreed to that compromise. So this is where we're at now. I mean, I still kind of stand by the resolution. We only wrote it a year ago.
I don't think I had missed the part where there was an attempt to make it Italian American Heritage.
Yes.
So we can no longer pretend like this, well, sorry, that's
No.
probably a little strong, but yeah, I guess we can. This is
Yeah.
specifically about Columbus and not
Yes.
Italian American Heritage.
Yeah, based on the petitioners.
Based on the
That's-
petitioners.
That was the
The
petitioners.
13 people or 18 people who signed the petition.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's only 10 signatures required for
right,
a
it was 13,
petition.
it was 13,
Yeah,
yeah, it was 13
no.
they got, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, you
No.
were gonna say,
Can you add that this was a point of discussion for the DEI committee's most recent meeting?
Yes. So, the DEI committee doesn't discuss this at length again. They feel very strongly that this is a topic that they had thoroughly researched, discussed, and worked on, and that it came to the decision of going forward to a ballot, and they stand by that ballot and the work they did. And so going through this, and their compromises really were coming down on, they were happy to compromise with Italian American Heritage Month or Italian American Heritage Day, but the DEI, the majority, I will say, not everybody, the majority of people on the town DEI committee could support specifically the Columbus Day.
So the committee took an official vote,
Yeah.
10-2, to not recommend
Yeah.
Article 22. And the
Yeah.
select board's vote was to recommend 3-2.
Yeah. That's not to say no amendments, somebody could propose an amendment on the floor on town meeting to suggest otherwise, but this is what we have in front of us now.
Other thoughts?
Yeah,
Article 22?
I mean, my thought on it is that we've kind of already litigated this issue,
Yeah.
and if you look at our calendars, it doesn't make any reference to Columbus Day anymore. It's I think we've kind of moved past this, and the way that the warrants the way that the warrant is articulated, it's just clear. We've already kind of had a discussion about it, and
Yeah.
I am a do not recommend vote.
Bill, did you want to add anything?
No, what John said.
Yeah.
and our resolution from last year, I mean, it's specifics about superseding, because that's what the ballot
That's what the ballot was.
but I
Yeah.
think, again, it would just be, I think Sean's point, do we feel like reversing ourselves on that, or reopening this, and I also would not.
And I would say too that the point that the DEI committee made when they were in front of the select board was that there was a townwide ballot,
Yes.
right? And so we know that annual town meeting is not a full sort of representative selection of the town. And so you already have an answer. It was a close one, but you have an answer from a townwide ballot.
Yeah. Which again, to point out, I think the turnout for that particular question was about 11.6, which to me suggests that there was a whole other group of registered voters in town who didn't feel the drive to the ballot one way or the other also. I think by not voting, it was also kind of reflective of our time, so.
Any final thoughts, or I will entertain a motion?
Motion to not recommend Article 22.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Chris?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
I am an aye. Sean?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mari?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. That is the end of the town meeting articles. We will move on to personnel update.
Ooh-wee. I might need my hour back.
Yeah.
this weekend to keep plugging away, but.
Got a little nap day, you still have time.
That's right.
Okey-dokey. So, real quickly, to draw your attention to the personnel update that was uploaded, there are several new hires, separations, and status changes that have been added.
A couple positives is that we have been able to hire 5 new substitute teachers, which we are still in a critical shortage for substitutes, so hopefully able to continue to attract them. We have made 2 new hires for ESPs, which we are quite thankful for, but continue to have openings at the Robinson, Westford Academy, Blanchard, and Miller School for ESPs. So that's just real brief. The elementary assistant principal position.
So we have an upcoming
We have Carolyn Jerizolo, who after many years of teaching in Westford Public Schools at Blanchard, and also serving as an assistant principal at Blanchard Middle School, and then between Nabnasset and Abbott, and more recently just at Nabnasset, in our new role as the elementary assistant principal, has put in her retirement paperwork, so we will be saying thank you and goodbye to her at the end of this school year. There had been an earlier comment that we wanted to pause and just revisit the job description, and there is not a lot, despite a lot of the visual updates that it might look like we added a lot, but just kind of added a little bit more structure to our job description. In describing the candidate that we are looking for. There were a couple areas where we just needed to make some adjustments to the title of Director of Special Education and Social Emotional Learning rather than Pupil Services. And also writing in under the qualifications for number 2, making a preference for special education in that area of the master's degree. Towards the end, you'll see that there were several changes that are being recommended for the physical demands of the job. And just kind of summarizing a bit more. So we can certainly discuss now. We would be looking to have a vote at the next meeting and would welcome any input now or at the following meeting.
Can I ask, has CPAC had a chance to weigh in on this, or a discussion of the role? Because I suppose this was a new, what's the word, job in one sense created in recent years, and I suppose we haven't as a committee kind of reviewed how that's working so far. But I also wonder, knowing that CPAC's role is also to advise the school committee and the school district on these matters, I would be interested to kind of get their take on the current job description and how it matches with how the role is playing out. And
Yeah, we can
experience,
certainly share with them. We were definitely going to bring it to you first.
Yeah.
And I will say, in the last couple of years, the overall feedback has been positive. And the feedback having one person not sharing the roles, because again, that for people to remember what the previous scenario was, is that one team leader was shared between buildings and a more traditional assistant principal was shared between buildings. And so by creating this new expectation within one role has allowed this one individual to remain in one building and become a vital member of that community. And that has been very positive. The role itself, the response to that, the response to the relationships, to the students and the families has been overwhelming. And we have heard that. But we could certainly, I don't know if CPAC has a meeting before your next meening.
No, but Gerard could reach out.
Gerard could reach out to the
board,
leadership.
yeah, to
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah.
There is one, I'm only reading it off the top of my head. The point 13 where we're talking about safety care certified or willingness to be trained. You know, as a district, we've been talking about restorative practices and collaborative problem solving. And I'm just wondering, is there a way to include that somewhere? Because I think just talking about the safety care training, while I understand it's one aspect of that role, knowing how that position can deal with a lot of our special education children on a day-to-day basis in terms of various issues. I just wonder if we could potentially look at rewording that somehow. I'm not too sure why, because it's just it's late o'clock and it's on a Monday night. But
Yeah, my thought would be, I mean, I think the willingness to be trained here is super
Yeah.
important with the safety care. And
Yeah.
since we currently don't have the expectation for our administrators to yet be familiar with restorative justice or collaborative problem solving, as that's something we're working on with them,
Yeah.
then I would say we could certainly layer it in as a familiarity
Yes.
with this, like that type of a
Yeah.
thing, as opposed to expecting somebody to already know it
Absolutely.
because we're in the process. But it would be super helpful if we found a candidate that was already familiar.
with it,
and
yeah.
or
And by putting it in there,
experienced.
they'll be able to bring it up if they are
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah.
You know, they'll
Yeah.
know that that's valued.
Yeah.
And just for safety care, a very small portion of it deals with any kind of physicality. The majority of safety care training is all around de-escalation.
That's correct.
I j-
I was gonna say, I think you probably said this, but do the other changes talk about the, that working group with the inclusive hiring?
Oh, they
Oh,
learn.
well, yes, the idea, yeah, we have some of our
Language.
Wasn't
our
it-
generic language shifts and even the structure, even making sure that we have the organizational scope and different pieces like that are a part of that.
Wasn't
we-
it to lower the degree too, or am I misremembering? Or maybe it's just
No.
not have
Can't
it
be
first?
because you
Yeah,
have to
no,
have
because
a
you have to have, yeah,
master's.
so there was, for some
Some
roles,
roles.
there
Oh,
were
okay,
discussions
okay.
about
Like an
that.
entry point, got
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
okay,
But-
sorry.
But when you're identifying
you.
what the entry level is, and for this entry level, they need to
You
have their
have
master's
to
degree.
require, yep, got it, okay, thank you.
Because yeah.
Sorry, Chris.
What kind, oh, sorry, go
This might not be a big deal, but I was just going to ask if you'd want to consider, so under qualifications, the addition on 10 with the DESI's new IEP, if there's a way to make that a little more generic so that we don't have to update this when it's no longer new.
Good point.
Like say, current IEP.
So if we really,
maybe?
really like it, we don't have to do it when
Exactly.
when it's, yeah.
In the
Thank
effort
you.
of efficiency.
Do you even just leave it as it relates to special education documents? I mean, because some of our staff are only getting trained in that new IEP now.
That's true. That might be something that we
Yeah.
lean into, like interview questions.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is the job description.
Yeah.
What we would like to do is to go ahead and to post for the position tomorrow. And some of these pieces, I mean, certainly we could write in a posting that doesn't need to
Right.
be to 100% mirror the job description, that we are looking for someone who has been trained. The majority of the districts have already gone through their training either this year. Some might have been coming from a pilot program. Some might have already been trained as a train the trainer. So if we were ever be able to attract that candidate, that would be a bonus.
Yeah.
And how long do you see this, Courtney? Well, if you're oh yeah, it's fine. How long do you see this job posting? Is it open-ended, or how long do you see it being posted for?
Well, this is definitely the season
Yeah.
for hiring. And so we, Nina will work with her staff to get together a search committee that will help out in identifying the next assistant principal. And I would think that once we have the posting up for a couple weeks, she'll start reviewing candidates and to make her selection from there. We don't want to be behind the eight ball.
Okay.
I would think timeline-wise, if she could do interviews before April vacation, that's probably
Right.
ideal.
Okay.
Any final thoughts? Take a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. Chris?
Aye.
All in favor, sorry. Chris?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Sean?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mari?
Hi.